morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to my presentation. Although the importance of the piano witnessed the popularity of piano music productions and concerts in the 19th century, the social and musical milieu seems to maintain the conventional artistic delusions and misogyny on those female pianists. According to musicologist Catherine Ellis' 1997 article, quote, "Female Pianists and Their Male Critics in 19th Century Paris," end quote. She uttered that the social environment of the 19th century was generally more demanding to women. The prejudice against women pianists was not only due to misogyny, but also to the other factors, such as ideological disputes and the gendering of musical repertoire. Critics who clung to the old ways of thinking about composer-virtuosos said that women could never be top-flight artists unless they let the work speak for itself and refrained from commenting on it. Female pianists play a central role in challenging traditional notions about the importance of pianist virtuosity and expanding the concert repertoire. Compared to men, however, they were disadvantaged and held to conflicting ideas about the relative value of particularly gendered piano repertoires. Under such musical milieu, Clara Schumann, as a contemporary female concert pianist at her own time, chose to challenge those repertoire which was considered the masculine category at the time with dazzling virtuosity, such as the works from Liszt, Beethoven, and Zauberg. As a female composer who was surrounded by her genius male contemporaries, Clara Schumann's interaction represents in her own piano trio in G minor, Opus 17. Among several of related accounts on this complicated keyboard trio, Clara Schumann's name, efforts, and her contributions to the genre seems to be neglected by these academic investigators. If one does not ever overlook the fact that she was one of the best concert pianists at her time, what evidence can be more convincing than examining her own works to demonstrate her musical talents? With its multi-layered nature and limited repertoire, such complicated art form can not only exemplify Clara Schumann's extraordinary compositional skills, her musical individuality and accomplishments, but also influences in a musical society dominated by her male counterparts. Thus, the purpose of this study lies in the exploration of Clara Schumann's musical achievements through the first movement of her only piano trio. The following presentation will show my analysis on how Clara Schumann challenged the traditional masculine genre as a female composer, and survey her perspective and innovations on the 18th century sonata form in comparison with other male contemporaries. In her 2021 article, quote, "Formal Innovation and Virtuosity in Clara Schumann's Piano Trio in G minor of 17, end quote, musicologist Nicole Grimes mentioned the popular and ideal type of piano works and piano trio was dominated by the engagement of Italian and French operatic productions with empathy virtuosity, compared to the works from her contemporaries such as Liszt and Zauber's opera transcriptions with virtuosity. Clara Schumann as a composer who selected a more intimate genre. A piano trio represents the German depths to challenge her compositional career. Under the popularity of the mainstream, Clara Schumann undertook much self-doubt and invisible hostile gendering issues, constructed her first large-scale chamber music with a highly contrapuntal and polyphonic texture against the mainstream. With such boldness under much challenges, Clara Schumann Trio defied traditional ideas about the true meaning of chamber music and pianistic virtuosity. Completed between May and September in 1846 as her first and only piano trio, this G minor piano ensemble work was possibly inspired by Schumann's beloved friend Fanny Hensel's In Progress piano trio in March at the same year. It was a direct influence on Robert Schumann's piano trio in D minor, opus 63, written in the following year. The whole trio presents Clara Schumann's compositional genius derived from the previous musical giant's mastermind. Based on her 2011 article, quote, Clara Schumann's improvisations and her mosaics of the small forms, end quote. Musicologist Valerie Woodring-Gerson stated that as an improvisation virtuoso since her youth, Clara already could apply several compositional approaches from Baroque master J.S. Bach's Prelude and Fugue, Beethoven's Sonata, and romantic character pieces in her earlier musical works. Such integration of various means from the past and her own time can also be found in her piano trio in G minor, opus 17. For example, the use of fugue and counterpoint compositional techniques, which could be traced back to the influence of Bach, can be found in both development sections of the first movement and the finale. The four-movement design of this trio stems from Clara's study of 18th century classicalism tradition, especially those chamber works from Haydn, Mozart, and Beethoven. In addition, learning from Beethoven, Schubert, and her contemporaries, the secondary theme tone of the first movement was set on the relative and parallel majors of the tonic key G minor. Based on their 2012 article, quote, Sonata form in the 19th century, end quote. Music theorists David Beach and Ryan McClelland stated that most of the 19th century sonatas in the Romantic period keep the four-movement form from the classical period. However, compared to the classical era, the length of the sonatas in the Romantic era has increased significantly. In addition to inheriting the pattern of classical sonatas, the tonality of its position in the sonata form of the 19th century sonata appear intervening key with its theme. Furthermore, the use of the three keys is expanded in its position, and there is no tonic to the dominant relationship like in the classical period. These above-mentioned musical features are well presented by Clara Schumann's piano trio. Among her own chamber works, this very trio is the only one with a traditional four-movement design. Allegro moderato, scherzo, andante, and allegretto, in addition to an adoption of sonata form in two outer movements. The inner two movements are in ternary form. The first movement, Allegro moderato, which inherits from its 18th century classical tradition, could be divided into three main sections: the exposition, the development, and the recapitulation, with a coda, as you can see on screen. The following analytical slides will demonstrate how Clara Schumann juxtaposed creative compositional means in her trio. Through deconstructing these compositional approaches, one can comprehend better on Clara Schumann's unique ensemble writing and musical insights apart from her male contemporaries at the time. The lyric theme on the violin part opens the primary theme action tone in the key of G minor. In contrast to lyric first theme, the percussive fortissimo G minor chords articulate the initial of transition section at major 22, with the modulation from the tonic moving towards the relative B flat major. After a dominant pedal heard between major 41 and 44, the transition section ended with a medial caesura at the major 45, followed by the introduction of the tender secondary theme. The secondary theme tone, though based on the medium B flat major, embraces the tonal ambiguity between B flat major, G minor, and E flat major with an excursion to D major. The codetta, which represents the closing tone and the essential expositional closure, leads the music back to the tonic key G minor. Through observation, the charming beauty of the first movement lies in the Clara Schumann's well-designed scheme of the exposition with her own inventions, such as the ambiguity of secondary theme like transition section, her own reinterpretation on the tradition of medial caesura, the design of both upper theme and both contour, and the vivid strategy on thematic transformation. With its strong rhythmic spirit in comparison to the primary theme, the commencement of the transition often confuses listener's ear or analysis eye, leading to the illusion that such contrasting thematic idea would be the opening of the secondary thematic tone. Here is what primary theme sounds like. By creating a transition section with such a robust thematic opening against its traditional meaning in the previous era, Clara Schumann generated a symmetrical design for her exposition, forming a nearly equal three-part exposition in contrast with the 18th century tradition design. Here is what the beginning of the transition section sounds like. Such formal innovation reinterpreted the long-lasting old sonata form design, directly influenced her husband's and later composers' formal design on sonata forms. Media caesura, a new term, refers to the intermediate halt of the standard two-part exposition, was introduced by both music theorists James Hapokowski and Warren Darcy in their 1997 article. According to Hapokowski and Darcy, the media caesura needs a transition to prepare and accumulate strength. The transition will maintain a specific strength, whether it is in harmonic or acoustic enhancement, until median caesura arrives. As an intermediate pause, the median caesura usually ends up either on the tonic or dominant harmonies. However, by transforming its original function as a mid-expositional break to an auditory bridge linking the transition section and the secondary theme song, Clara Schumann redefined such technique by juxtaposing two paused string instruments with the transitional piano part without a break, gap, or any solid harmonic indication. In addition to its function as an auditory bridge, the median caesura as a subject occurs twice, followed by the addition of two string instruments as counter-subject in quick succession. Forms acoustically the establishment of the secondary thematic idea. Such innovative redefinition on media caesura with its double function carved her piano trio out a niche for itself in the piano literature. Let's listen to how Clara Schumann set up this double function median caesura. The band theme was set closely to classical theme type. In contrast, the subordinate theme was established to a characteristically 19th century romantic theme type. By setting of her primary theme, secondary theme, and the opening of the development section to different archetypes based on bass chromaticism, Clara Schumann's setting of a descending chromatic bass lines to actively contribute the expression of the first movement, allegro moderato, through arranging sequential chromatic descending motion as the blueprint of the primary theme's bass line. Its sequences, chromatic intensity, and extended dissonance create a more progressive harmonic language in achievement of formal expansion. Similarly, the downward directedness of subordinate themes bass contour advantages the expansiveness and breadth to the secondary thematic song. in addition to the exposition. Similar design of the bass line structure was used at the piano part in the development section. There are a series of descending lines and harmonies utilized between major 90 and 106. Clara Schumann's well-balanced arrangement of her thematic and bass line writing is as refined as those romantic giants. Let's listen to these. In consideration of Clara Schumann's design of her thematic arrangement throughout the whole movement, one can take a closer look at the thematic elements of primary theme song, which embraces an antecedent from major 1 to 8 and a consequent between major 9 and 21. Major 1 to 2 form a basic ideas of motive 1, which would not only become the main motive of the development section at major 104, but also recur frequent as thematic ideas later throughout the whole movement. Major 3 and 4 represented the contrast idea, and the rhythmic idea at the major 4 as motive 2 provided one of the main rhythmic elements in both violin and cello parts later. The two repeating dotted fragmentary idea at major 5 as motive 3 becomes the second half part of the motive at the major 22 at the beginning of the transition section. Major 6 to 8 as the cadential idea emphasizes the completion of primary thematic subject and reminds the listeners later in the recapitulation. As for the transition section, one can see that the first thematic idea at the major 22 was casted by the fusion of major 2, major 3, and major 5. The piano part at major 30 appears the second thematic idea, which was formed by the fusion of major 2 and major 5. Now, let's listen to how the preliminary motives were transformed into the main thematic idea in the development section. Through the examination of how Clara Schumann transformed her thematic ideas into the main elements of the other key areas, one can have a better understanding that the female composer not only lived up to her distinguished heritage from the classicism masters, but also had much influence on later composers. The development part was mainly divided into two sections, the pre-core and the core. The pre-core from the major 92 to 106 opens the contrary motion materials between three instruments. The strings play rising stepwise figure in unison, while the piano part states the declining chromatic triads and passes through the subdominant C minor towards its relative E flat major. Based on Grimes' article, the manuscript of this trio, Opus 17, reveals Clara Schumann's original plan in consideration of starting the chord section with a three-voice fugue. The fugue subject would be forced by 6 notes, which were taken from each instrument between major 100 and 102, as follows. The 2 notes D and D flat from the cello part at major 100. The 2 notes C and F from violin part, and both notes F and E from the piano part. However, from the existing published edition, one can know that the 2-voice fugal writing between strings at the major 106 with the piano part as counter subject replaced the original 3-voice fugal plan. A contrapunto and imitative dialogue, which begins at major 103 between the 2 strings, forces the following fugal section. Thus, listen to this fugal section. The intensively imitative approach between 2 strings in fugal section achieves its peak as a similar stretto section of a fugue between major 123 and 132. And this is what stretto section sounds like. The modulation progress in the development commences from C minor toward to E flat major, pass through the ambiguity between F minor, G minor, C minor, and eventually arrives at the dominant of G minor. With its highly contrapuntal texture and chromatic harmony language, the recurring primary thematic motif appears at the cello part at major 133, anticipates the emerge of recapitulation at bar 165. The recapitulation inherits the same structure as the exposition. The first theme song recurs based on G minor key at bar 165 until bar 191, as the transition alters move toward to G major, the parallel major key of the tonic key. The secondary theme song in recapitulation was set on G major, gradually modulates toward the remote B major at bar 221. And this is what it sounds like. Essential sonata closure bar 249, appears in the dominant of the tonic key before the closing tone. The coda returns to G minor with the following final statement of the primary theme in violin and cello in unison at bar 266. Let's listen to what coda sounds like. The final flourished interplay between the two string instruments, which is accompanied with a series of intensive diminished chords by piano, leads to the final powerful plagal ending. The social environment of the 19th century was generally more demanding to women. Women musicians' musical activities were limited in performing in salons or teaching. Compared to men, however, they were disadvantaged and held to conflicting ideas about the relative value of particularly gendered piano repertoires. For example, female pianists should perform in different repertoire than male pianists. Women should perform such works by Bach, Haydn, Mozart, and Hummel, and men should play the works by Beethoven, Liszt, or Thalberg, which are more highly virtuosic technique pieces. A woman's stage presence should also be classy, such as body language and facial expressions. At the time, the public still had many restrictions on women learning music. Also, there were few opportunities for women to be trained in composition. Surrounded by her male genius contemporaries, such as Chopin, Robert Schumann, Mendelssohn, Brahms, and Liszt, the completion of her own piano trio proves that Clara Schumann was bold enough to challenge herself as a composer, especially under the social prejudice against women musicians and some tough circumstances. The female pianist composer undertook multiple roles simultaneously in her household: as a spouse who was dealing with her husband's increasing mental illness in summer, a mother who was suffering a miscarriage at the same time, and as a breadwinner who needed to maintain her demanding schedule of teaching, composing, and concertizing. Although nearly overwhelmed, the 27-year-old female virtuoso finalized her first large-scale ensemble music, a chamber work that her genius husband Robert Schumann praised as a magnum opus of an extraordinary composer. And a masterpiece is regarded as one of the most important imprints in 19th century music history. Thank you very much for watching and listening to my presentation. I hope you all have a great day.